Hey crafty friends, Carrie here. Today I'm going to be doing a tutorial on painted papers. So here's some things I use for painty papers. These are papers that I had been in my spray box when I'm doing glimmer mist, and they're excellent for using to turn into painty papers. And I also have some other items, some book pages, music sheets, plain paper, some cardstock, watercolor paper, file folder, and craft cardstock. And then I also have an envelope that I had messed up that I'm going to use the bottom part of. So I really wish I had a jelly plate, but I don't. So I'm going to show you what I do with my craft mat. So here's some craft paints and distress paint, glitter paint from Michaels. It's cheap. I also have some Tattered Angels glimmer paint, distress crayons, and you could use any water-soluble crayon or water-soluble pastel. And then I'm going to be using some distress oxide. And then I'm going to show you some tools that I'll be using when I'm doing this. So I have a splatter brush, a hard plastic brayer, scraper, credit card. Okay, so one of the things that I use is this Teflon mat. You can buy these at craft stores, but you can also buy these for cooking supplies, and they're much cheaper if you do that. And it's wipeable and stick resistant, which is very good. So that's one of the reasons that I'm going to be using that in this demonstration. Okay, so I'm going to start with Distress Oxide inks, and I'm going to do it on this piece of cardstock. And you are going to need a spray bottle of water. Okay, so I'm going to start with the Distress Oxide inks. That's picked raspberry, and then I'm adding some wilted violet. And then I'm going to add a little mowed lawn. And then I'm just going to mist it with some water. And you'll see the start to splotch and to move a little bit. Then I just use a brush and move the oxide inks around. And it gives you this nice chalky look, which I really like. And that's all I'm going to do to this paper. So I'm just going to set it over there. And my handy friend's baby wipes. I get these at the Dollar Tree. They're really cheap. They're $1. And I love them for wiping my hands up, wiping my craft mat when I'm crafting. Wiping off tools are really great. Okay, so now I'm going to take this music page and I'm going to use the Distress crayons. And I'm just going to kind of scribble some color on. I'm not really, trying to create anything specific. It's just going to be more of an abstract. And then I mist a little water and take a paintbrush and just start moving it around a little bit. And here again, you could use any water-soluble crayon or gelatos or watercolor pastels and stuff. And I'm adding in some other colors, just scribbling it on. And I'm going to mist it a little more and then move that color around a little bit. And I'm not really trying to get this to be where you can't see it. I want you to be able to see the music page through the coloring. I'm using my finger a little bit there. I'm going to add, just continue moving it around. And I'm going to add some more water, and I'm going to start coloring with this pink one. And you can see it kind of starts moving that around right away because the paper was wet when I put it down. I'm just going to kind of move it around. And then I'm going to bring in some of this like lime green color down here. That's one of the things I really like with these. You don't get muddy colors when you're doing it. So that works really well. I'm going to smear it around with my fingers as well. Just move it around till I'm happy with it. Okay, and I'm going to call that one done as well. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how I use my mat instead of a jelly plate. So I spritz it with a little water. And I'm squirting out a little pink paint and a little purple craft paint. And I'm going to take my brayer and I'm just going to kind of roll that around. Now this is going to be very thin because I sprayed the mat with water first, so it makes it kind of watery and loose. And now I'm just going to take a paper, press it down. That's just plain copy paper. And when I lift this up, you're going to see it's not solid. It's kind of watercolory, kind of streaky, but I kind of like that. And now I'm going to take, this is dilution paint, and it's thicker, and I'm not spraying my mat again. So it's going to give a different look when I do this. So I'll put some of that down. You can see it's a much thicker consistency. And then I'm going to take my brayer here in a second and start moving it around. And I'm just going to kind of coat this area. Okay. And then I'm going to add some other colors. I'm going to add a little orange here next. And when I add this orange in, I'm not going to roll it with the brayer again. I am just going to tap it out a little bit with a brush. This is because I do have to be a little bit careful here because I don't want to create mud, and I'm using colors that could create mud if they're mixed too much. And I'm going to add some of my favorite hot pink. And I'm just going to take this little scraper thingy and just kind of tap it around also, thereby not making mud. And I'm going to take a music sheet, press it down, and then because this is thicker, I'm going to take my scraper. I'm just going to kind of run it, and you can see there's mud where I squished it out at. And I'm just going to scrape it around on the paper so that it kind of gets good contact everywhere. And then here we go, and here's that print. So I'm going to lay that off to dry. And now I'm just going to do a little bit of cleanup here. I'm going to take some of those baby wipes and wipe down my mat. And kind of clean it up a little bit and wipe down my tools. And I'm going to do my brayer a little bit with some baby wipes as well. And I'll get ready just for the next step. Okay, next I'm going to show you a technique where you just take a paper, you squirt some paint on it, and I'm going to take a scraper and I'm just going to drag it around on the paper and smear this bright pink color everywhere on this page. I really like this technique. It gives you a very sheer coverage, and so you can see right through it, and I like that. So you still know it's a book page. And then after I get the pink on, I'm going to add in some lime green. And I'm just going to add some little dots. I'm not going to add as much of that as I did of the pink. And I'm going to take the scraper and I'm just going to move these little dots around. So you kind of get the green over the pink. Not really trying to mix them together, just trying to kind of create a little bit of color. Okay, so now I'm going to take some of the Dr. Martin's iridescent ink and splatter that on the paper. And then I'm going to take a credit card because it's clean, and I'm just going to scrape this all over the paper to give this an iridescent pearly finish. And it doesn't really mix with the paints because the paints are basically dry because, like I said, they're so thin they dry. And then there you go. That's that page. And I'll move it over. And we'll move on to the next painty paper. Okay, so I'm going to take this craft cardstock and I'm going to sprinkle some light blue paint. I'm going to take this palette knife and just kind of move it around. And then I'm going to get another shade of blue, a little bit darker. I'm sorry, a little bit lighter. I'm going to drop it on, and I'm going to do the same thing. Take the palette knife and scrape it around. And just kind of move it around. And then I'm going to get a darker shade of blue. And I'm going to squirt some of that out. And again, I'm going to take the palette knife and just kind of start moving it around, covering parts of the paper. Okay, now I'm going to add in some more of a dark blue, a little bit different blue, a navy blue. Start scraping it all over. Okay, and I'm really trying to get this cardstock covered this time. Now I'm going to just pour out some of this lighter blue. I think that was Salty Ocean from Tim Holtz, or it might have been Tumbled Glass. Anyway, I'm going to use the scraper this time, and what I'm going to do now is I want to scrape this light blue across all the other blues to get this whole page covered. And I'm just going to keep scraping. And you're going to see I'm going to wipe off the scraper, and then I'm going to come back, I'm going to scrape some more. Because what I want to do, I want to be able to see the other blues through this light blue. So I'm going to try to scrape off excess, which is what I'm doing here, just trying to get rid of the excess. Okay, now that one is done. Okay, so I'm going to take this envelope, I'm going to spritz it with some water, and I'm going to go back for my Distress Oxide inks. I want to put some of the picked raspberry on, and then I'm going to come in and I'm going to add some of the wilted violet. Just going to tap it around. And I'm going to take a brush, and I'm just going to start moving this Distress ink around. And I'm just going to change the positions. Now I'm taking a baby white and kind of using it and just kind of moving it around, getting it to be a light color. And that's going to be done with that one. And now I'm going to take some of these glimmer misted pages, and I'm going to add some of the glitter craft paints. These paints are from Michaels, and these are very sheer. This is one with the chunky glitter. I'm taking the pink one here, and I'm just taking a credit card, and I am just scraping this. This paint dries kind of shiny, and it's very clear anyway. I'm going to add in a little purple on it down here at the bottom, and I'm going to scrape it around. That's really all I'm doing. I'm just kind of adding this color to the edge parts of the page so that all of it has something on it. And then move that out of my way so I have a place to put this one. Just a little bit more. Okay, and then there's that one. And I want to take another one. On this one, I'm going to use the gold glitter paint, and this one I'm using this time is a finer gold glitter instead of the chunky. And here I find that I hadn't opened this paint before, so I gotta open it up. And I'm going to squish that on, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to take a scraper, and I'm going to scrape this gold glitter paint all over this sheet. Okay, and this basically is going to end the Painty papers pretty much. I'm going to show you next how to do a watercolor technique without watercolors. So I'm taking my watercolor paper and I'm spritzing it down with water really good. I'm just tapping off a little bit of the excess. And I'm going to let that soak in, and I'm making myself a little puddle of water. And then I'm going to take the Distress paints. This is picked raspberry, and just squish a little out. And then I have the preserves. I think it's blackberry preserves. Squish some of that out. And I'm going to get a little mustard and squish and put it out. And then I've got some, I think that's mowed lawn. And I had this round brush, and I'm going to get it good and wet. And then what I'm going to do is just mix in some water into that paint. And I'm just going to start making kind of an abstract flower. And as you see, the paint really starts to run because the watercolor paper is so wet. It just really starts moving. And I'm just making these kind of circly, abstract kind of flowers. And you watch how it starts to bleed. Okay. Now I'm going to come in, I'm going to get some of the dark. I'm going to put it in the center. And then later on I'm going to decide I'm not really crazy about that. But okay. And now I'm just going to add in some of the preserves. And just kind of come around and add it in. And you can see some places where it just starts to bleed and make these really neat little flowery patterns. I'm adding a little extra water because I thought that one was a bit too dark. I'm just kind of pulling it out a little bit. And there I go, drop it another little bit. And then where I mix some of the pink and the preserves together. And just kind of splotch it around. Okay, now I'm going to come in, I'm going to get yellow without adding water to it. I'm going to come in and tap it into the centers of all my flowers, including the ones where I'd done the darker center before. I was going to add in the little yellow to add centers to my flowers. And now I'm going to take water, and I'm going to come in here, I'm going to pick up the green, and I'm just going to come in and make kind of abstract leaf shapes. And you're going to see I'm just going to come around here and do this all over. This is just really simple, and if you don't have watercolors, this is how you can kind of do a little watercolor paper without having to have watercolors. And my brush is getting a little dirty, so I'm going to clean it up there. Okay, I'm going to continue with the green, just bringing in little dots all over the place to kind of fill in a lot of the white areas with some like foliage in the background. Okay, and then that is pretty much that one. Okay, now I'm going to show you how to do a watercolor using just a book page. So I'm going to squirt out some different color paints. Here's some pinks and some blues and a little green that I'll be using to make my flowers. And the same basic setup, spritz that paper, get it nice and wet, and add my little puddle of water, dipping the brush in, and then I just start making my little kind of circular, watery, round kind of shapes. Now you see this does not really bleed as much on this type of paper, but it still does have some movement to it. And I'm sorry that I'm a little out of frame down on the bottom. Anyway, just go in and just keep adding my flowers around. And get in a little bit lighter ones. And just keep tapping them in. I get another shade of pink here. And get some more water. And I'm going to come in, I'm going to start adding some pink flowers here. I'll just mix a little pink and blue to get a little more purpley color. And I'm sorry you can't see me adding those over there. You go again. And I just keep doing this and overlapping them a little bit. Kind of filling in the page. And as you see, this is really very easy. Anybody can do this. You don't have to have watercolor paper. You don't have to know how to make a flower. This is just a very abstract, and you just kind of make a circle, and that's what makes your flower. Okay. And now I want to finish making the flowers on the edges of the paper. And then I'm going to come in, I'm going to add this pink into the centers. I was trying to get it to the consistency that I want it for the centers, because I don't want it quite as runny for making the centers. You see how the flowers are starting to take shape as I add in the centers. That's what kind of makes them really look like flowers, is when you get in and add in the center. I need a little more pink paint there. Now I'm going to come in and I'm going to add the leaves. And I'm just going to kind of tap around here, making splotches of green in between the flowers to kind of fill in the vacant spaces. So I really hope that you enjoyed this tutorial on Painty papers and how to do a watercolor if you don't have watercolors, because not everybody has all the variety of supplies. So I like to sometimes show a way that you can do things without necessarily having the exact right tools. Okay, so now that one is done. Thank you for watching my video. Give me a thumbs up if you like it. Subscribe if you're not subscribed. And I hope everybody has a wonderful crafty day. Thank you.